The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to the Derbyshire Dales once again, people. You've just got to love the Peak District, haven't you? It's even better when the sun comes out. And you know, people do like to holiday in this part of the world. And you can do that in this place if you know where to go. There's a place called Beech Croft Farm where a lot of people decide to pitch up in the summertime. And, to be fair, all year round as well. This is Blackwell in the Peak. Blackwell in the Peak, dark spring on a pointed hill. Rounding off this current run in the Derbyshire Dales, we have Blackwell in the Peak. The meaning of this one's name is a little controversial. Some believe it derives from the Norman Blackwell, or King's Land. The much more likely derivation is the one accepted by the University of Nottingham's English place name website, which I use for every episode. They say it's simply a dark spring on a pointed hill. This is the second time we've been to a place called Blackwell. The first time was also in Derbyshire when we had a look at the former mining village near Alfreton. This one couldn't be any more different. Blackwell lies just off the A6 between Bakewell and Buxton, and its suffix in the Peak exists solely to distinguish it from its Bolsover counterpart. It lies on the River Wye on the edge of the Carboniferous limestone of the White Peak. The parish includes part of the Monsell Trail and part of a steep, narrow valley called Chee, where Blackwell Mill is located. Within the village itself is Blackwell Hall. In the grounds of the building, several Neolithic remains have been found in the past, including a flint resharpening flake for transit axes. There are also the remnants of a Romano-British field system dating from around the year 400 AD. Blackwell Hall has far more history than that though. It was once associated with Bess of Hardwick, who we already know quite a lot about. Let's see what else we can learn as we journey around this tiny village high up in the White Peak. Blackwell Village is one of the smallest in the Dales. It consists of a handful of scattered houses lining 2 or 3 country lanes to the south of Blackwell Hall. This has always been a small farming community in much the same way as neighbouring Priestcliffe. Although Blackwell is its current name, in the 14th century this was known as Blackwall, spelt and pronounced in the same manner as the famous tunnel in London. Additionally, it was sometimes called Blackwall in Peak. Blackwell is a reversion to the name that was recorded in the Domesday Book, Blashwell, literally dark well. Blackwell was one of the manors held by William Peveril, and his tenants took their names from the place sometime in the 12th century, or a little later. Peveril would later grant his estate to Lenton Priory. Although located a good way from Blackwell, it was up to Lenton to appoint a man to collect the rents and tithes in the township. By the early Tudor period, Richard Blackwall was the man in charge of this. Within a few years, the rent-collecting proclivities of the Blackwalls were redundant as the family migrated south to Kirk-Ireton, where they built a brand new manor house. Blackwell would then come into the hands of the Crown until 1552. At that point, Sir William Cavendish took over. He had arrived in Derbyshire as the second husband of Bess of Hardwick, who had plans for a grand mansion of her own. However, unlike the grand manor house in Kirk-Ireton, Blackwell doesn't have one, or at least if it did, it doesn't now. That said, there is a Blackwell Hall, which we'll come to shortly. Okay, so now we've turned right off the main road through Blackwell, and this footpath that we're on will take us up to Blackwell Hall. However, before we get there, we need to talk a little bit about Beech Croft Farm. Now, behind me you can see there's not a lot of much, to be honest with you. It's just a load of rubble and a wall and a tree and some buildings that belong to the next property along the road. But beyond all of that is Beech Croft Farm, and it's like a little holiday park. And I know a few bits and bobs about this because I did a bit of research into it before I got here. And yeah, it seems like a really nice place to pitch up in the summertime, or indeed any time of year. Here's a bit more about it. Beechcroft Farm Caravan and Campsite is owned and run by John and Julie Gregory and their daughter Jodie. 3 J's, that's easy to remember. The team took over the running of the farm in 1989 when John's father died suddenly. His mother ran the caravan site alone for 20 years until ill health forced her to retire in 2005. Since then, John and Julie have managed the entire site. The Gregory family have farmed in Blackwell for several generations. They bought Cottage Farm from the Duke of Derbyshire's Chatsworth estate when he got married in the 1950s. The name was later changed to Beechcroft Farm. They diversified into tourism in 1974 and have since successfully continued to run the caravan and campsite alongside the small farm. In 2011, the site was given a facelift and a makeover, and should you visit today, you'll find a brand new toilet and shower block and several reasonably sized pitches with electric hookups. But that's not all. In 2019, Beechcroft opened their brand new reception and shop, and 2 years later, in 2021, Daisy's coffee shop was added too. As for the farm, that's managed primarily by Jodie's husband Dan. Beechcroft has beef cattle and several sheep. If you visit in the springtime, it's not uncommon to see baby sheep and calves roaming around. And why do people choose Beechcroft? Well, that's simply because it offers easy access to everyone's favourite Dales Trail, Monsell, which you can get to from the Pennine Bridleway that runs past the park's entrance. Via the footpath where we left off, we're now coming into another farmyard, Blackwell Hall farm no less. Now, unlike Beechcroft, you can walk through this one simply because it lies on a public right-of-way. Blackwell Hall Farm is a very important establishment for many reasons, but the main one would be its association with a place we've recently been to in Nottinghamshire. Without Blackwell Hall, Cropwell Bishop Creamery in Rushcliffe simply couldn't function. The dairy here supplies the creamery, enabling it to produce Stilton cheese. The Buxton branch of Derbyshire Young Farmers meets here once a week. So too does a rural craft group of around 16 women, an art group, and a retired farmers social group with weekly speakers and activities. So what about Blackwell Hall itself then? Well, there is a house here by that name, and you're looking at it now. However, this is nothing like what it was, or indeed could have once been. Bess of Hardwick, as we know already, lived at Hardwick Hall, but her plans involved building an equally spectacular mansion here. The thing is, nobody knows for sure if it was ever built. Bess of Hardwick was something of a mega builder, inspired in all probability by Sir William Cavendish's efforts in rebuilding Chatsworth House. Her portfolio of grand houses included several massive efforts. Plans for such a house in Blackwell exist in the British Library, which state that Robert Smithson was commissioned to build one. You might ask, why would Bess want another country house only 15 miles away from Hardwick? The answer lies in the plan. Like Hardwick, it was to be rectangular, with the hall running right through the principal story. There were to be square towers inset from the corners of the building, but on the entrance side they were joined by a main wall pushed forward flush with the outer sides, a very similar effect as that at Hardwick, but much more compact. There were only 2 main rooms on either side of the hall, a parlour and a great chamber. The hall was full height, meaning there was also space for a pair of rooms on either side above, linked by a gallery over the hall screen. Now, this lack of accommodation tells us that Blackwell was not designed to be a permanent residence, instead, a lodge for occasional use. Essentially, it was to be a retreat to which the family could repair once a year whilst the main house was cleaned from top to bottom. A classic example of such a house is Lord Burleigh's Wothorpe Lodge, near Stamford. But was it ever built? It's unlikely. It was supposed to stand on a patch of ground opposite the current Blackwell Hall. Although there are bumps in a nearby covert suggesting work had begun, it's believed they have more to do with lead mining. If they are the remains of some medieval building work, it's likely Bess of Hardwick died before most of it had been started. So we've almost completed the circuit of Blackwell in the Peak, and you've probably gathered that there isn't really much to see here, and what there is you can't really get to unless you've got permission to actually be there. Blackwell Hall, for example, you can't just go wandering up the drive. Beechcroft Farm, it's obviously better to be a guest than rather just driving in and trying to do it that way. But yeah, that's basically Blackwell in the Peak. And if nothing else, you've got some beautiful scenery around here, haven't you? We haven't quite done with scenery though. Oh no, because Blackwell also includes some other areas which are breathtakingly beautiful. Let's head now along the A6 towards one of those. Okay, so now we've come up the A6 and this is a lay-by which is off the A6. It's called Chee lay-by. If we come across here, you'll see exactly what you can see from Chee lay-by, and this is quite a good view. Look at this. Take yourself a look at that. That is Chee, and isn't that gorgeous? Now there's some things to talk about as regards Chee. It would be nice to actually go down there and, you know, be in it myself and film what's down there. You can see some bridges there. Look, there's one there and there's another one over there. I know what all those are about, but yeah, getting down there is a little bit difficult, shall we say, unless you're prepared to walk for a long distance. No matter though, because up here you've got a great vantage point. Let's talk a bit about Chee, shall we? Chee is a steep-sided gorge on the River Wye, and this lay-by is a brilliant little stopping point on the A6 to admire its sheer beauty. The dale has a protected nature reserve which is overseen by the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. It contains ash, yew and rock white beam woodland on the cliff sides, and abundant wildflowers including cowslips, early purple orchids, rock rose and the rare Jacob's ladder. Dippers are often seen darting low above the river and bobbing on the rocks within it. Other birds nesting in the valley include blackcap, chiffchaff and willow warbler. Down there too is Chee Tor Tunnel, through which the Monsell Trail passes on its way to Topley Pike Junction at the head of Chee Dale. There's also a riverside footpath along the length of Chee Dale with several wooden footbridges over the river. Sets of stepping stones allow walkers to pass the foot of the cliffs. You may also notice some houses down there too. Those are Blackwell Mill cottages. And you can see there's a board here which tells you some of the landmarks you can see in the valley down below, and what you can see a little bit further afield too. So from left to right, I know you can't read this but I can. Tunstead Quarry is away to the left. I can just see that out of the corner of my eye there. There's the railway line cutting through the dale there. Then you got the Blackwell Mill cottages, and then the River Wye, and then the Monsell Trail, which we know a few bits about already. A few footpaths over here. And then there's something called the Plum Buttress in the very far distance over there. Can't see that myself, but it's there somewhere. I don't know. And that's basically it. And everything on the bottom of this board is all to do with the sort of flora and fauna, if you like. So we know about the Blackwell Mill cottages because we've just seen them. Just turn the camera around there. There they are in the dale. And there's the quarry in the distance over there. Now I know a little bit more about Blackwell Mill and those cottages, in fact. Let's attempt, shall we say, I don't think this is going to work, to get down there and see if we can see them in a bit more detail. And I was right. Just a bit further up the A6 towards Buxton, there's a turning which leads into Chee and towards Blackwell Mill. However, you're not allowed up there if you're in an unauthorised vehicle. You can walk it because it's a bridleway, but it's quite a distance. No matter, here's one final picture-based section about what's up there. Access into this deep gorge is limited, but if you're willing to walk it, here's the history of Blackwell Mill, which is actually more about the railways than it is about milling. The mill processed corn and may have dated way back to 1066. Most of it has disappeared apart from its weir. What's left is marked on maps these days as an ancient monument. It stood at the meeting point of several valleys, these being Chee, Great Roxdale and Ashford Dale. Long ago, this area was known as Slitherford and was the location of the smallest railway station in Britain, Blackwell Mill Halt, whose two platforms were long enough only for one carriage each. The station was used in a Pathé News film in 1938. It had no buildings apart from a small shelter, which is still standing today. The station was last used in June 1966 and officially closed in 1967. The halt was for railway workers who lived in Blackwell Mill cottages, a terraced row of 8 dwellings in the valley. The trackbed of the line is part of the Midland Railway main line from London to Manchester. Blackwell Mill was located at the point where a triangular junction extended westwards to New Mills. The branch carried on into Buxton along Wydale, crossing the A6 road and the River Wye by a high twin-arched girder bridge before entering Pigtor Tunnel, where it emerged into Ashwood Dale. The extensive railway history can still be seen in several places along the A6. Between Blackwell and Buxton, you pass under several railway bridges. And folks, that will do us for Blackwell in the Peak. This episode goes a long way to proving that even the smallest places have history that belies their modest size. You definitely don't get much grander than an association with one of the most powerful women the country has ever known. There's more Dales on the way soon, so stay tuned. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.